The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good evening, listeners. Of course, as you know, this is my favorite time of the week because I get to be with you. And I want to share that, we have had an international guest. We had someone, Berit, a few weeks back from Denmark, and she stayed up late till like 2 a.m. just to be here with you. And today, we have Sarah Ann from Australia. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me here. And I'm so happy that it's not 2 a.m.
Yeah, no, it's nice that, it's morning time for you. And
yeah, for sure.
Folks, what I want to share is that, it's morning time for you, right?
Oh, it's morning time. Yes, sorry, it is. It's 11 a.m. So thought you said it was nice that she turned up at 2 a.m. I'm like, yeah, that's commitment. That's really awesome.
We're just having an organic conversation. So before we get started, folks, I want to make sure that I thank you, each and every one of you, for supporting our entrepreneurs who have been impacted by COVID-19, because you have been getting my book, Expert to Influencer, which is available on Amazon, and you continue to support. So really, really cherish you and love you guys because you have been so wonderful. So I want to share Sarah Ann. I want to share a little story about her. So probably I would say a few months back, we connected on social media and Sarah had reached out and we were just having conversation. And I looked up her Facebook page and I said, she has a lot to offer. So I just told Sarah, why don't we hop on the phone, which is Facebook Messenger, folks, or WhatsApp, and let's have a conversation, just plain conversation. There is no agendas, nothing, just to get to know each other. And as I got to know her, she's a beautiful person in and out. And now I'm proud to present her. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. That's awesome. I really, really appreciate that. Hey,
we have already got one of our listeners is asking a question. What is the time difference from where you are to mountain time in the States?
I think maybe about 14 hours ahead, roughly. I'm not sure where in the States is mountain time. So I think I'm about 14 hours ahead of New York, I think. So it's
yeah.
What day is it? It is Tuesday at 11 a.m. here. So I think, something like that. Something about 14 hours.
Yep. And there is another question. Is it easy to make friends online like that?
Yeah.
Can you take that question?
Yeah, I think it is easy to make friends online like that. I think that a lot of people kind of get stuck and hung up, especially if you're in business and you're doing business online, is that sometimes there is a huge intent behind what people want to get out of an interaction with someone, and that can probably cause a little bit of friction and it make it quite difficult to just connect with people. But if you genuinely just want to connect with people and someone else is open to that, yeah, it's really easy.
And it is true, folks. Of course, there are some backers out there, so just don't take everybody at face value. Make sure to do your due diligence and look out. And yes, you guys are right. We are Monday time, and if you talk about the mountain time, you guys are at 6. So I would say 6 and 6, 12 and 4, 16 hours ahead in Australia, where Sarah is. So Sarah, tell me, how was your childhood?
My childhood. Oh wow.
Mhm.
I wasn't expecting that, was I? I love it. I had a good childhood in the sense that I had very supportive parents. We were middle class. They didn't, have a whole lot of money, but we weren't living in poverty. But they were very supportive of me in anything that I ever really wanted to do. They were very, very strict around morals, things like lying and stealing. They were very anti those things. But I struggled a lot with mental health challenges, probably from maybe 12, 13, 14-ish is when I started to really have a lot of challenges. And then by the time I was 17, I was diagnosed with bipolar and borderline personality disorder. And so by the time I was a teenager, things were quite rough, I would say. I wasn't a model child. I feel bad now for what some of the stuff I probably put my parents through and the amount of times they probably cried themselves to sleep thinking about me. I don't really know where to go from there. How was my childhood? I don't know. What do you want to know about it?
Our childhood begins where our character formation starts and what it leads into being the person that we are today. And of course, we have got a couple of questions already rolling in. So one of our listeners is asking, do you feel you had a tough childhood?
I feel like that really comes down to perspective and how you choose to interpret the situation. I mean, I definitely didn't have an easy childhood, but I mean, tough in comparison to what? I had a roof over my head, I had food in my tummy, I had very loving parents. But yeah, I did have things that I struggled with. I was also obese as a child. I had a bit of a binge eating problem as well. And so I think I struggled a lot with health, physical and mental health, which obviously can say that, things were challenging for, a teenage girl to be physically and mentally unwell. You could say that it was rough. Rough due to external circumstances, though, no. There was nothing inflicted upon me. It was everything just health related in that sense.
Yeah, and that's the reason.
Go ahead. Sorry,
So,
I saw a question pop up. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll have our audience folks. We love you, and we will make sure that your questions will be addressed. And at the same time, we also want to showcase Sarah Ann's story because she is such an inspiration. So, can you share how your life went through your journey? I know your story, but audience doesn't know, through ups and downs, and how you arrived at that journey when there was that pivot point when things shifted for you.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little bit hard to say when things would have pivoted, but I think for me, the journey that probably led me to being where I am now and doing what I do today for work and with business probably all started around the age of 18. So that was when I was at my peak of, mental struggles. At the time, I'd been diagnosed as being mentally disabled. So in Australia, that means that I could get a disability pension, and that's not an easy thing to get in this country. And so I'd been officially told I was disabled and that I shouldn't work and that I couldn't work and that I would have to just take medication and get this pension. And I never did get that pension, but at that point I was peak crazy, peak psycho little girl. I was absolutely mental. And I got my first sales job at that same time. And so I think I think that was probably a peak turning point. I fell into sales because I had dropped out of school quite a few times, 3 times actually. I'd attempted to finish high school and it didn't happen. And so this was the only job that I could get that didn't require experience or an education or anything from me. And at the time I was quite desperate to make money to buy breast implants actually. And so that's kind of where I started on that journey towards sales and business. And I think because I struggled so much mentally at that time as well, I spent a lot of time online reading and Googling things about mental health. And it's amazing how much of that really overlaps with sales, because sales is all psychology and it's all connection, it's all communication, and mental health, you know, there's a huge psychological aspect behind that. Why do we think a certain way that we think? Why do we feel the way that we feel? Why do we respond certain ways to certain situations? And so a lot of that is quite applicable in the business world and with relationships as well. And so I think from that point, I kind of became a little bit obsessed with both. It was a bit of it's not really like a clear-cut journey. It was quite messy. You know, I spent a lot of time trying to fix myself, but then a lot of time reading books to try and make more money. And then it was all kind of intertwined and connected and kind of just went from there.
And what that tells me is that you found your passion, in the sense that here you were trying to figure out what was happening as far as mental health was concerned. And you just did not, even though you had, as you said, you know, it was so difficult to get disability in your country, you just didn't take it and sit. You wanted to go out there and do something. So that speaks volumes, even though you did not say it. And as you mentioned, you know, you started Googling and you embraced it. Yes, you had challenge and, you know, just your openness to share. And that is one of the reasons it's so important to talk about mental health today, especially because even people who are very, very strong, today's pandemic and all these economic downturn and so many racial injustice or whatever, you know, social problems, and there's so many things that are going on that is impacting people. And it's important to have that conversation that we feel that, and it's okay. So when you took that mix and you found something, that's a turning point. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And I think like what you just said just then, where you know, they said that go get this pension and this is your life. And I didn't accept that. And I was like, no, I'm going to go find another way. I think that attitude right there is why I've been able to build the business that I built. So like a lot of people will place their certainty in someone else, in other people, you know, like in that situation, I could have placed my certainty for my life and how the trajectory was going to go in the psychiatrist. I could have been like, okay, you're the expert, you're the doctor, and you say this is my life, I'm going to accept that. And I didn't accept that. I've always had, you know, placed my certainty within myself and believed that I have the ability, and only me, to create a better life. And that translates into business. Like I have the ability and only me to grow my business. I have the ability and only me to get healthy and to do these things. And I've always gotten my certainty from within myself. And I think that is like really powerful when you're trying to make big changes in your life, no matter what the changes are.
I loved what you said. I did not accept it.
Yeah.
You have within you what you got. So love that. And our listener has shared something beautiful. You're proof we can do what we set forth to do. Thank you for sharing. And that's powerful, very powerful. And people want to know, what business are you in? So tell your journey, that, you know, how you went through bankruptcy. Tell about your whole business journey and how you've moved and how you went from 0 to 6 figures.
Yeah, nice. So I actually went bankrupt before I started my business. And I thought for a long time that would mean that I wasn't going to be able to start a business. So my first, bit of a lie actually, because my first business, technically I didn't know that I was running a business at the time, but it was a multi-level marketing business. And that was my first proper sales job at 18. And so technically it was a business, but at the time I was quite young and I was just like, oh, I'm just making commissions and I'm making sales. And I didn't really realize that I was building a business at the time. And I did that for about 6 months. I did quite well. I grew a team of 7 people, something underneath me, and we were doing good. But again, mental issues and stuff. And I bounced through jobs like crazy for quite some time, maybe 18, 19, 20, 21, 20, probably about 5 years where I did not have a job longer than 5 to 6 months. So I really just churned through them like crazy. And I was really good at getting them. I was really good at making sales, really good at making money. I just wasn't so good at keeping jobs. And so I did that for a while. And eventually I was, at the same time, I was also racking up a lot of debt because I'm like, oh, I'm making money, and I was getting approved for loans, and I was young and I was impulsive, and, you know, I wanted surgeries and silly things. And so I'd racked up all this debt, and then I got fired from a job that I had selling timeshare. I actually punched my manager in the face, unfortunately for him. And so they had to let me go, and they fired me. And I think I was 19, like just about maybe 20 at the time. And I kept refusing to take jobs that weren't going to pay me what I was already getting paid before. I had a lot of ego. I had a lot of ego for this. You know, I'd started in sales quite young. I'd done quite well. And so here I was making 1,500, maybe 2,000, like some weeks as an 18-year-old. Like, that is a lot of money for an 18-year-old to be making. And so I had a huge ego. And so when it came to when I'd get fired and have to get new jobs, that ego was there, and I get a job and I quit, and I get it and I quit because I'm like, I'm better than this. I'm too good for this. And eventually my ego sent me bankrupt because I kept turning down jobs, and I had all these debt collectors coming after me and chasing me. And eventually I had no choice but to sign a debt agreement. And that was it. Like, my credit rating was ruined for 7 years. And I thought, oh, this means I can't start a business. I didn't have a lot of experience with anyone who had businesses. I didn't know a lot about running a business. I always kind of knew that I'd want to work for myself one day and that I could, but I never really put a lot of thought into it. And then I think I used it as an excuse because, I mean, ultimately going out there and starting a business is a big, scary thing to do. And so I think that I used being bankrupt as a bit of an excuse to not just go and try and figure it out. And I'm like, oh, but I need to get a loan to start it or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And after a few years went by, I was traveling, I was backpacking, and all I could think about was just business. Like, I'd been through quite a few different sales jobs, and I worked my way up in some companies and some quite large companies as well, and created sales training programs and systems and things for them. And I really loved it, but I didn't love that I made a lot more money just selling as opposed to training and teaching. Obviously I wanted both. And so I was traveling and I was backpacking. All I could think about was starting this business. And so I just ended up coming home and starting the business, which wasn't really as simple as just starting the business because I didn't make any money for probably about 2 years post, like when I said that I was going to start the business. I probably spent about a year building a program, learning more stuff, building a website, doing all this like back end stuff, not really figuring out how to go and get clients, and a little bit afraid to put myself out there, especially on social media and in front of people, and to do things that may, you know, have people like reject me in a way, like if no one likes my post or comments on my stuff or whatever. And so I kind of focused on other things that didn't really have me going out there and facing people and being like, hey, would you like to work with me? Which is quite ironic for someone who has a very strong sales background to be afraid of selling. But it's a whole new kettle of fish when it's yourself, right? You take that quite personally as a personal rejection. And so it took a couple of years before I finally actually like not got over that. Probably about a year before I was like, Sarah, you need to sort your shit out. It's been too long. Like, you need to go and find someone to help you get clients. And then it probably took another like 6 or so months. I went through a couple of business coaches before I kind of found one that had what I needed, and I was able to start signing clients and doing the sales training. And then within 6 months of that, like once I really hit the nail on the head on what things I needed to do each day to be like generating leads and signing clients, it probably took me like just under 6 months to do 100K. And then about 12 months to do roughly 200K. So from like 0 to 200,000 in 12 months, once I kind of got past the fear of putting myself out there and implemented like a proper process.
You beautifully said, Sarah. And here's the thing, right? You hit the nail upon the head, that we are afraid to put ourselves out there. And folks, that's the thing. You know, you may be dreaming of something and, oh, now is not the right time. And, you know, I'm not ready yet. But whenever you wait for perfection, so here's the thing, what is perfection? We are human beings, we are flawed. And if people that are going to reject you are not your people anyway. So this is the time to put yourself out there. And we have had several questions going on. So I'm going to go back and take one of the first questions. You had mentioned about you had punched your manager in the face, and one of our listeners asked, why did it come to blows?
Why did it come to blows? So I will go back and say that, like, I had been diagnosed as mentally disabled. I was very unstable. Most of my days back then, like at 18, 19, 20 years old, most of my days would consist of me having at least one huge mental breakdown, like crying, screaming, shaking, banging my head on the wall. Like I physically was in so much pain that I didn't know how to get these emotions out of me that were hurting me. Like I was sick. But why did I actually punch him? I wouldn't say, like, he was my manager, and he was kind of like hitting on me, telling me that he cared about me, rah rah rah, all this stuff, basically just wanted to sleep with me. And I'm like, not really believing what you're saying here. And he was, still putting the moves on me for ages, and just the whole like, oh, you're special, blah blah blah. And then I found out that he was sleeping with another chick in the office, and that they were kind of seeing each other, and it was under wraps. And so obviously I felt quite used and manipulated. And he was quite a bit older than me. Like I was 19, 20, and I don't know how he was. He was probably around 30-ish or something. And the other girl that he was dating in the office was about his age. So I really felt like he was trying to manipulate me. And then what actually set me off was we were working, and when you're selling timeshare, how it works is you have a sales professional who pitches the product or service to the couple, and then you have a manager who comes in and helps with negotiating price at the back end. And I had asked for him to come and help me, and he'd left me hanging, and he was helping her, and I just lost my crap, and I was like, that's it. And so I punched him, and I left, and I got fired. Wasn't my proudest moment by any means, but I was definitely a very, very mentally unstable person at that time.
Well, here's what I'll tell you, Sarah, is that first of all, you're being vulnerable, sharing that story. And secondly,
That's the truth.
That's
That's what happened.
And thirdly, look where you have come. So it's about the journey. It's so important. And you mentioned that, just doing sales was not enough for you. For you, teaching and training was more important. And that's what brought to you doing your own business. Do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, not a whole lot. Like the reason that I really loved teaching and training, like the reason that I love sales and selling, is because you make money. Like you get off the phone call, you've helped someone with their life, they've said thank you, which is an awesome, it's an amazing feeling to help someone. They say thank you so much, I'm super happy. So you're like, yes, this is great, I helped someone and I made money, this is amazing. Like that's just a really awesome feeling. But when you're training, it's like adding an extra level. So that person has solved their problem, they're like, thank you, and like, this is awesome. This other person has then made money, so their life has changed. You're like, wow, that person made money, so their life has changed as well. And then you're sitting there at the back end to thank for it. So it's just, I don't know, it's just a bit of an addictive feeling. We all have our little things that give us kicks and stuff, and for me, like, it's such a good feeling.
Oh, I totally get it. It's, when you're selling something, it's just giving somebody a fish, versus when you help people to empower themselves, and when you are helping them become emerging leaders or entrepreneurs or whatever you're doing to help them out, what you're doing is you're teaching them how to fish, and they can feed themselves for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
So definitely powerful. And there's another question. Did you do all this by yourself, or did you have any partners?
Just me, yeah. So I now have a couple of people working with me who help me out in the business, but otherwise, up until very recently, it was all just myself. And in terms of like, if you're talking relationships, maybe, or like partners or anything like that, in that, no, just me.
And one of our listeners is saying, So what I'm hearing, he deserved it. Going back to the point.
I mean, I felt like he deserved it too. It may not have been appropriate time and setting for me to do that, and probably could have handled it better, but I feel like he did a little bit.
You know, it's a thing in the past, and
It is.
you are able to talk about it. That's the key. And so I think so one of our listeners is asking the question that you mentioned about that you went through really tough times health-wise, and they're asking, how did you overcome this behavior?
I wish that I could give that to you in a simple answer. It definitely was a really, really long journey. It's been 10 years since I was at the peak of my, my mental instability. And it's probably been about 3 years that I felt incredibly mentally stable and healthy. And I do now. I do not believe that I have any of the diagnoses that they gave me. I don't have any emotional problems, but it was a really, really long journey. And so I guess talking about overcoming that, there's a few different elements and aspects that you need to be looking at. So one of it is physical. For me, I took a lot of antibiotics as a child, and I think that this really disrupted the bacteria in my gut, which then affects your hormones. I developed really bad insomnia, and then obviously that's going to have a play on your mental health as well. So there's the physical health aspect, diet, exercise, gluten, like what things are you intolerant to? And then there is the tools and techniques that you use just to deal with your emotions. So they may not be fixing the problem, but just learning how to deal with them so that you can move through them without having that person punching someone, as an example, right? Or without breaking down. So you know how to actually deal and respond with them, which a lot of people, I think, in the personal development space, they tend to focus on that. They'll focus on meditating or breathing or journaling and things like that, right? So it's helping you deal with it. It's not necessarily fixing an underlying health problem if you have one, but you're learning to respond to your emotions. And then I think another thing that was really, really valuable to me was finding a sense of purpose and something that I was really passionate about, that I could pour my energy to, that I didn't need to I suppose be like codependent on anyone else or anything else, so that I was able to focus on myself. Like I'm single now, but I spent a really long time very single, not dating or anything, because I just mentally was not able to connect with someone in that sense. And so having things that I was passionate about so that I could just have that time to really focus on me and like mentally and physically heal myself was probably really helpful too.
No, that's fantastic that you have shared this journey. And let's talk some more about business. So tell us that, you have shared that you love teaching and training. So how is it that you help others move from where they are to get their business going? Just share with us what your process is.
Yeah, sweet. So initially when I started this, and I was saying before how it went from 0 to 200,000, at that time I was just doing over the phone sales training. And so I would work with coaches or consultants, anyone who, had sales calls coming through, but they weren't able to convert those into clients. And that's how it started. And then as things grew for myself, and I kind of had clients coming back to me and saying things like, Sarah, I can't do the training this week because I don't have any calls. I don't have anyone to, I can't record my calls, or I can't practice this, or I can't do this because I don't have any calls. And so as my business started to grow, and as I started to get sort of feedback like that from clients, I started to really focus on like what things I was doing at the front end of the business with the marketing and the lead generation that were enabling me to actually have leads and people to talk to. And I would just be giving tips to my clients at first one-on-one, and then eventually it kind of got to a point where I had like a bit of a unique process that I'd sort of pieced together through working with different coaches and different mentors, and what things worked really well and what didn't work really well for me and what I struggled with. And then just also my background with sales and psychology and different little things that I ended up putting together like a program for it. And I took some people through it. I took some pro bonos through it and taught it to these people, and we ended up getting really awesome results. And so now I don't just do the sales training, but we work on the marketing and the lead generation, the branding and the content as well, mostly just for like coaches, consultants, anyone who has like an online service-based business. That's what we do.
Oh, fantastic. So let's say, one of our listeners may be thinking, okay, I want to start an online business, especially with everything that's going on right now. So let's say they have a small business. What would you give them advice in terms of marketing and lead generation? And we'll come to sales as well.
Okay, cool. So my number one tip would be to choose a platform. To choose one platform that you want to go really, really deep on. And now this can be quite the opposite to what a lot of gurus will teach. A lot of people say you need to be in several different places so that you're creating that feeling of, oh, she's everywhere, I can't get away from her. But the truth is, if the people that are seeing you on each of, say you're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, but the people seeing you on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube aren't the same people, they're all different people, then you're not creating that feeling. You're not going very deep. What you're doing is you're just scratching the surface for the people that are interacting with you. And what we want to do is we want to go deep on those people. You want to have a customer journey process set up where you've got multiple touch points, multiple interactions, and multiple opportunities to be connecting with these people and building trust with these people, with your content, with your marketing, with your lead gen. And it's much easier to do that if you choose one platform to start with and really zone in on what your process is and what your customer journey process is for these people and what the experience is going to be, as opposed to trying to spread yourself really thin across lots of platforms. You don't have the same effect, and then you find that you are far more burned out, you're more exhausted because you've got so many things that you need to manage, and each platform has a slightly different dynamic. And so it's at first, especially at first when it's just you, it can be quite difficult to be repurposing content across all of those platforms. And so that would probably be one of my biggest tips, is to choose one and go really deep on your customers as opposed to going wide and thin, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely it makes sense, because what you're doing is, what I've found is that when you figure out what that one platform is for you, and to find that out, it's really, really critical to know where your target market is hanging out. And when you know where they're hanging out, picking that platform, and as you mentioned, going deep, what it does is it builds deeper connections. And when you build deeper connections, it's going to go ahead and start that journey of building that relationship. And one of the things, what you mentioned was that you can get burnout, you can get stressed out, especially social media can be the FOMO, folks. I'm sure most of you guys know is that it's fear of missing out. And when we are talking about fear of missing out, that burnout causes, it can cause stress, emotional tension, and maybe emotional upheaval as well. So do you want to share a few strategies how people can cope with all of that?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm definitely by no means a coach when it comes to, burnout or mindset. I'm definitely not the best mindset coach, but having obviously been through what I've been through with the mental health and the business, I've sort of figured out what works best for me. And I think for most people, where they get stuck, like what really holds them back is that they maybe allow themselves to stay really busy but focusing on the wrong tasks, and the tasks that you should be doing seem to be the tasks that get left behind. And so I would say, if you've chosen your platform and you know what it is, and you're going to go deep on it, then you need to know exactly how you're acquiring clients. You need to know what your strategy is and what your process is. And then to be able to do that consistently every day without feeling burnout. And it is a lot of work to start with, right? If it's just yourself, and if you're also got kids, and if you're also working a day job, it can be a lot. And so I think the key is to really understand exactly which activities matter and which activities do not matter. And you need to learn to say no to the things that you honestly do not have time for right now, because that's when you get burned out. If you're trying to build a website, create a program, sign clients, do this, do that, if you're trying to do like all these things at once, you just will not have the time to effectively do them all. So you need to understand, okay, where am I at in my business right now? I'm at the stage where I just need clients. I need to get this many clients so that I can have proof of concept and make sure that it works really well. And so I'm not going to focus on all these things. I'm just going to focus on these 5 things. So knowing exactly what you need to focus on, and then creating habits around them, because those things right there that are generating income, that are bringing in leads and sales, no matter how much you grow or scale or things change, those things will still always need to be done. And maybe one day you might get to a point where there's an element of them that you can outsource, and there's an element of them that you can have team members take over and do, but they need to be done. And so creating habits around them so that you don't wait until you feel motivated. You don't wait until you have energy. You don't wait until you're in the mood or you're feeling inspired today to go and do it. It needs to get done every day. So you need to be able to, A, learn to enjoy the process, but B, remove the emotion from actually sitting down and doing the task and just turn it into a habit like brushing your teeth, or a habit like making coffee in the morning. It just gets done.
Just do it. As Nike says it so beautifully, right?
Do it.
And you said
Just do it.
Just do it. And you said it. And I like what you mentioned about was knowing what tasks to do. And that's about having the clarity and vision of where you're going. Because if you don't have clarity, then, for example, simple story of one of my clients is a great coach. And when she transitioned out of the corporate world, and as she was transitioning out, she did not know where she wanted to go. And she was just kind of following into consulting the leadership, and it just didn't work out because that's what she had left the corporate for. She did not want to be there because of the politics and all that. And she was back into the thing, and she was not enjoying, she was losing the motivation. And then she was referred to me by someone, and we sat down and, okay, what is it that you want to do? And finally she landed and said that, there's so many other women like me who are unhappy in the corporate world, and they are looking to do something outside, to start their own business, to find their own identity. And once she nailed on it, once she had the clarity of where she wanted to go, then it was exactly clear, as you mentioned, about knowing the activities, what you're supposed to do, and having that laser focus makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, definitely. Like you need to almost be like tunnel vision. Like you need to know, like, my goal is to help these people, and this month I want to help this many of these people, and to be able to do that I need to do this and this and this, and you need to be able to just stick with that and have that tunnel vision on that, even when other things kind of get distracting or get in the way or seem more fancy today or whatever. And it definitely helps if you know exactly what you want to do and what you want to achieve. It's so much easier to just stay on the path, where most of us, what we do is we fall off. And we fall off the tracks, and we do it repeatedly, and we do it over and over and over again. And then we might even come back to where we were before, and be like, fuck, this is where I already knew I should have been, but I allowed myself to, get distracted and go do a million other things.
You said a good point, getting distracted and doing a million other things. And listeners, one of you asked, what is FOMO? Fear of missing out on what? Fear of missing out on what's happening on social media, being on social media for so many hours that you are getting distracted by it and letting it literally control your life. And when that happens, you are not doing what will bring joy to your life. So it's fear of missing out. Oh, what if my friend posted? What if somebody liked? And what if I missed out on responding to someone? It's okay if somebody puts a comment on your post, and if you respond even after 24 hours, it's okay, as long as you're tagging them. So it's about creating those boundaries and not getting distracted. And one of the questions that has come along is that, as you mentioned, that as you gain clarity, as you know what to do, there's a good possibility that content will change. So the question is, what if content needs to change as you go along?
Was the question what content needs to change?
No, what if the content needs to change?
So change it. So for the most part, specifically, obviously I work with coaches and consultants, so this is very specific to them, but actually now that I think about it, it's actually not even specific to them. It's specific to any brand or any person or any business. Like, people are buying you and they're buying what you're about and they're connecting with you and your values. And so if you're going on a journey, they want to go with you. Like they if your content's changing because you're changing and you're evolving and you're heading somewhere else, those who are on that journey will go with you. And those who aren't meant to be they'll funnel out, right? They'll find their way and they'll go elsewhere, and that's okay. I think that it's not a negative thing at all. It's probably, if anything, it's a positive thing, right? Because people want to see, like if we look at Apple as an example, what if Apple stopped releasing new phones? I swear they make like one tiny little change, one tiny shitty little change, and people are lined up around the block to get it. They're evolving, they're growing. We want to be connected to brands and to people who are doing that. Especially if you're coaching and you're consulting, you're helping other people to better their lives. They want to know that you're out there and you're kicking your own goals and you're bettering your lives. And if you're changing and evolving, that's okay. The people who are meant to go with you will go with you.
Mm-hmm. And great question. So first of all, great answer, Sarah, and great question. Because I'll tell you, that means that you are aware that you are moving in the different direction. And if you're moving in a different direction as you are aware, and if you are aware, you're going to be able to serve your clients far more better than if you are unaware and just putting out content that's not relevant to your message. Because the key is that, as Sarah mentioned earlier, right, about staying motivated. And how do you stay on a day in, day out? That's your inner motivation, and growing and adapting with your own change. And as you're evolving, that's going to keep you motivated. So now that may bring us back to the question, we talked about marketing and lead generation. So do you want to share a couple of tips for people, let's say, who are online? What's a good way to generate leads?
Yeah, okay. I think my number one tip is to not fall into the trap of thinking that you can fully automate anything. And I fell into this trap when I started. Part of me, I bought into the lie of, okay, I'm going to set up a course and a funnel and some ads. I'm going to work really hard this week. And then next week, I'm going to have my dream hands-off business. I'm going to be sitting on the beach and blah, blah. The truth is, if you are not continuously growing and evolving, people won't keep coming with you. So there is no such thing as a fully automated business that doesn't always need continuous growth and input into it. But people buy from people. Like the human connection and the element side of things, especially when you're starting out and you have a small brand and you have a small presence. Like I still consider my presence to be very, very small. And if you you don't have something huge out there, people are going to move through your process and your lead generation process, and they're going to trust you more if you're actually taking the time to connect with them and to spend that time with your audience. So spend that time replying to comments, spend that time in the DMs, have those meaningful conversations with people, turn that into content. Go and, if you have a conversation with someone about something, go and make a video about it and tag them in the video. And it sounds like a lot of work, and it is a lot of work, but it's probably one of the most powerful things you can do is to make sure that there is a really large human element in your marketing and in your lead gen. Not to say that you can't have things automated, you can't have some things, where the funnel just does the work and the emails just sent out and your assistant might just do this. Like you will have that, but if you try to do it whilst removing all human element because you don't like it, or it doesn't feel comfortable, or it's too much effort, or you're afraid of the rejection, or you're afraid of people saying no to you, there's a big reasons why people don't want to actually connect with strangers online. If you try to remove that, it's going to be much, much more difficult.
You're absolutely right, because people buy from people. And actually, folks, I may have shared this before, but this is even before COVID-19, in early 2020. So what had happened was, my marketing team was doing research, and what they found was that trust between consumers and brands was at lowest in the beginning of 2020. And now think about, with 2020, as we are moving through pandemic, people are feeling the stress. So especially in these times, more so than ever before, it's time to connect with people. And yeah, you may say, oh yeah, I'm just connecting on the internet, but look over here. We have a budding friendship, which has deepened quite a bit over the past several months, and we haven't met each other in person, and yet it can happen. So take that time. And one of the key things, as you mentioned, is about connecting with them. And let's say if somebody has asked a question, make that into a video while you're tagging them. So you're acknowledging them. You're giving them that respect of a human being. So that's really, really great. Before we go back to one more question, can you share with people where can they find you and how can they connect with you?
Yes, just on Facebook. So just Sarah Ann. There's do the personal page, not the business page. I mean, it's there if you want, but just Sarah Ann on Facebook.
Awesome. And would you like to share one very quick tip about sales with people? Because, sales is something that frightens people.
Yes. Okay. If I can only give one tip, it is to shift your focus when you are on the phone call.
That's fine.
Okay. Well, this is going to be my number one tip anyway. If I was to only give one tip, my number one tip would be when you're on the phone call to shift your focus away from making a sale, and shift it to helping, shift it to serving, so that you're able to get on the phone and enjoy the connection and have fun whilst you're doing it, and not have that desperate neediness oozing out of you to make a sale, or that uncomfortableness of I don't know what to say next and I don't know where to go, and then that comes through as well, right? And that just what that does is if you kind of sound uncomfortable and uncertain, then they feel that. They feel your uncertainty, they feel your dis-ease, and they won't buy it. And the same thing goes if you're just thinking about how to make a sale, like how to push them to the sale, how to ask the next question to move them towards a sale, then they feel that too. And so it would be just to shift your focus before you get on every call. Remind yourself how amazing your service is, how powerful it is, how it's going to help them change their life, but then focus on that, on helping them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So when you're focusing on helping others, you're just sharing. What Sarah, you mentioned is, that how wonderful your service is, how it's going to make that difference. And when you are sharing how you're able to solve a problem, then it's going to make an impact in somebody's life. And think about it. Let's flip the situation. If you are not to share what you offer and how you can make their lives better or help them do things faster, or how you can resolve something for the business or personal life or in the relationship, what's going to happen? They are not going to get the solution. And if you're not giving them the solution, it is doing them a disservice. So when you think from that perspective, that when you're sharing and not selling, when you're serving and not selling, things will change. So thank you, Sarah Ann. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Listeners,
I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say I don't know what else to say. It's been so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun too. Absolutely. So listeners, thank you for joining us. Really treasure you guys, and go out there, shine your light, and time is now. Don't wait to go out there, especially if you're thinking of becoming an entrepreneur. And we do bring, seek out Sarah. She is an amazing person. So you've heard her story, very inspirational, and you're very inspirational and engaged. So I'm really grateful and thankful for each and every one of you. And of course, thank you, Rebel, for making the show possible. And we'll see you again next Monday. Until then, take care.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week, Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time.